Okay, so on page 300, you can write this down. The domain is off to the side because the domain of a parabola is everything. It doesn't matter what form they give you. That's the answer. That's super easy. Most of the time, you start in general form. That's in blue. And I use blue arrows to show what are the things you can get to from the general form. You can find the y-intercept super easy. You can always go to the standard form. And then to the factored form, it says sometimes, because sometimes it can't be factored. The general form, you can always look at the a value, and you can tell if it opens up or down, and comparatively to the regular x squared graph, whether it's narrower or wider. Now, if you go to the general form to the standard form, they're circled in green, and everything that's coming off of the standard form has green arrows. And if you do get the vertex through the green arrow, you could continue with the green arrow to get the axes of symmetry. I guess technically you could add a green arrow there, because you can get your vertex and then get your range, or you could just get your range directly by just using the y-coordinate of the vertex. And I can add a black arrow there too, because if you have your vertex and you have your a value, you can write standard form. Then from your general form, if you can go to factored form, then you can find your x-intercepts. And what I have, after doing the color coding with the arrows, then I have some things highlighted. It is my opinion that the highlighted way is if you had any choice available, and it just asked you to find one thing, for example, if it just asked you to find the vertex, this is the easiest way to find the vertex, through the standard form. I think through the standard form is the easiest way to find the axis of symmetry. But if they ask you for the x-intercepts, there's only one easiest way to find the x-intercepts. You have to go through that black arrow. So this diagram shows you the three main forms of the quadratic function. Each of them tells us something. Often we want to know everything about the quadratic function. So the standard form is probably the most useful to find stuff, because it finds your vertex, axis of symmetry, and range really easily. But if the question also asks you to find the x-intercepts, then you have to go through the factored form. So example 2 that we're going to go to in a second asks us to graph. And in order to graph, you need the vertex. So according to this, vertex is easiest through standard form. And you need the vertex and one other point. So you might want to choose your y-intercept as your other point, or use your a value. Sometimes your vertex isn't nice, like if your vertex was like in example 1, which the y value is 125 over 8, you don't necessarily want to use your a value to go over 1 up 2.5, because it's not going to be easy math. So sometimes your second point when you're graphing might be nice just to use your y-intercept. Or if you find your x-intercepts really easy, maybe that's what you want to do. So we need our vertex, and so for graphing, you're either going to find your vertex through the standard form, or you could find it through factoring. And you'd have to make a decision based on what you see, what you think would be the easiest and the fastest. So here's our 2 examples. In example 2, we want to sketch the graph. For both of them, I'll start with A. Super easy, since it's in general form, I might just write out, I know my y-intercept. I've got a point already. That was super easy to do. So if I can find my vertex, I'm going to be fine. And now I have to decide how I want to find my vertex. Do I want to complete the square, or do I want to see if it can be factored and solve it that way? Okay. Generally, I'm going to say standard form is better, so I'll do both. I'll find standard form, and I'll do it during factored form, and we can analyze it after which one you think is better. Okay? Standard form is generally better because it always works. Remember the arrow to factored form said sometimes. So, like, would you take a pathway if sometimes that doesn't work? Okay? That happens to me every night I practice badminton. I have to come back to my classroom. The sometimes way to get back to my classroom is to go up the stairs. But sometimes in the evening, do you know what happens when you go up the stairs? It's locked. So the always method is to go to the elevator and push the button, and then I can always get back to my classroom. But sometimes I think, oh, maybe the door won't be locked, and I go all the way up there, and it's locked. So and I have to go all the way back down, then go to the elevator. So that's why I'd always put the factored form as second, because it doesn't always work. But since this was in the factored form part of our notes, I'm kind of like thinking it's probably going to work as well. But let's look at standard form. So how do we do standard form again? We factor out the a value out of the first 2 terms. Leave the minus 14 there, add a space. Complete the square. Well, if it is a minus 5, this would have to be half of that, which is minus 5 over 2. And if it's a minus 5 over 2, if I square that, I'm going to get plus 25 over 4, which means I've actually subtracted 25 over 2. So to compensate, I would have to add 25 over 2. When that minus 2 hits the plus 25 over 4, it becomes negative 25 over 2. So to compensate, I have to add 25 over 2. And I get a common denominator, negative 28 over 2 plus 25 will give me negative 3 over 2. So my vertex is 5 over 2, comma negative 3 over 2. And I'll put the graph right underneath here. So on my graph, I could go to 2.5. I'll label it in green here. 5 over 2, comma negative 3 over 2. And then, oops, this way. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. that would count as a complete full marks graph. I've labeled my vertex and one other point. I guess I technically could have gone over 1, down 2, but do you see how working with fractions, it's a little bit more awkward? I could have labeled another point, but my y-intercept seemed to make the most sense. Now we're going to decide, was this the way to go? Or should I have used the factored form? Well, the factored form, can we take out a common factor of -2? Yes, we can. Leaving me with x squared minus 5x plus 7. Is that right? Yes? Hey, this is like going up the stairs. Can you factor this? So this would have been a dead end. Does not factor. Crap. Here we thought it would at least work because it was in this chapter in that part, and it does not factor. So you would think you could go that route, and it doesn't work. You thought you'd like the second one better? No. Yeah, because the first one you're like, oh, has a fraction. Maybe I'm not going to like the first one. No. Either one would have had fractions. Okay, let's look at the second one. First of all, for the second one, can you see that your y-intercept is super easy to find? It's 0,5. And we'll try standard form first, which is my recommendation. We'll also look at factored form. Maybe it works. It's not yet. No. Well, we'll check. Okay, so standard form, you would have to factor out the 4, leaving you with x squared plus 3x. Leave a space, leave a space. Oh, we got fractions again when we complete the square. Bracket. It's going to be cut that 3 in half, it'll be 3/2. So if it's a 3/2, we would have to add 9/4, which technically means we've added 9 when it gets hit by the 4. So to compensate, we subtract 9. Which gives us -4. And our vertex is -3/2, -4. That actually wasn't too bad. Get really good at the completing the square, because the last section in this unit is all about doing it again and again and again. So, we have our y-intercept at 5. 0,5. And our vertex at -3/2. -4. 1, 2, 3, 4. -3/2, -4. There we go. Could we have factored this? Let's see. Well, there's no common factor, but maybe we could just factor it directly. 4x is a little bit of an issue because it could be 4 and 1 or 2 and 2. But the 5 is only one option, so if I could factor it, it would have to be 5 and 1. I actually sometimes start with the last ones if my first ones have more than one option. Now, if I put 4 and 1, that never makes 12, but if I put 2 and 2, My outside is 2, my inside is 10. That could make 12 if everything is positive. Does it still work if I make everything positive? Gives me the 4x squared, gives me the plus, yes. So based on this, if I plug in 0 for y, I could find my x-intercepts. My x-intercepts are -1/2 and -5/2. So on this graph, I'm going to add those in blue because I just found them afterwards. I would find out this is -5/2, 0. And this one's -1/2, 0. Then if I wanted to find my vertex this way, what would I have to do? I would have to find my axis of symmetry, which is going to be the average of my x-intercepts divided by 2. -5 plus -1 would be -6. -6/2 on the top will be -3. And I still have to divide by 2. Look at that. That matches up. That would have worked. And then to find our vertex, we would have to plug in the -3/2 in for x. And you could either do it in the factored form, and since that's the form I can see, I'm going to do that. Order of operations. If I multiply this out, I'm going to get 2's will cancel out. -3 plus 5, that'll be 2. 2's will cancel out. -3 plus 1, that'll be -2. I got -4 that way too. So I would find my vertex to be -3/2, -4, which matches up with that as well. That being said, if we look at the whole thing, I still probably would argue, is not the standard form a little bit easier?
Yeah.
Okay? Especially, like, if the factored form gives you fractions, you still have to do a lot of mental math with fractions. Less probably mental math than you had to do, you still had to do mental math with fractions in the standard form. But that's why on the original diagram that we started this question with, I'm like, if you have to find the vertex, that's why I have the yellow arrow coming from standard form. It's usually going to be easier. Right? Not always, because I would say in example 1, because we had to find the x-intercepts, the average wasn't bad, plugging it in, sometimes that's better, but generally the standard form is what you're going to be using the most. Okay, so questions for practice. On number 2, you can circle 6 and 7. 6